A lot of people are gonna either think this is really stupid or really great, but everything I do as I move forward has to be for me. Every day was completely different than what I was used to. And in your mind, you just think, okay, I'm stressed, or maybe I'm coming down with something. You just start justifying it. In running your own business, just managing the space, the operational expenses, my days were very full and busy.
Tiffany is very bubbly, very lovable. She's very open. She's fun. She's just a great person to be around.
She is truly a remarkable person that has an indelible spirit and definitely pushes through and does her absolute best at everything that she can.
All of a sudden, I started getting really tired midday. My battery just went from full, normal, everything's good, to I can barely keep my eyes open. And I was having a lot of pain. People were starting to say, oh, don't you remember this? We talked about this last week. And I noticed that I couldn't remember. One day I woke up and I was getting ready for work, doing my hair, listening to a podcast, and my chest was paining. And I was just like, oh, it's no big deal, it's no big deal. And then it wasn't going away and I started to panic. I ended up being admitted that day for observation, ran some blood tests, and they're like, everything's fine. I went back and ended up seeing a different doctor, but he asked me, what other symptoms are you experiencing? And I said, oh, and there is this dizziness. And he said, well, how long does it last? And I said, well, maybe a minute or two, and then it seems to pass. And he said, how often is that happening? And I didn't really think about it until he asked me, and I said, oh, maybe like once an hour. Once I said it, I was like, yeah, that kind of seems like a lot. The CT came back with demyelination and spots in my brain, and that I would need a semi-urgent MRI.
Demyelination is basically damage to the insulation surrounding the nerves. And the most common cause of demyelination is, of course, multiple sclerosis. But there are other conditions that can cause demyelination as well.
I said, so what is it? And he said, well, it's what we thought it was, MS. I am telling everyone in my Rotary that I have MS, and that's why I've been so flaky, because their feelers are out and they know me, so they know something's wrong. So they're starting to get kind of pushy. Like, what's going on? What's going on? Why are you not there? What are you not telling us? In my misunderstanding of the report, I didn't realize I hadn't had an actual diagnosis. I started documenting it on my own videos because I felt like I had to prove this to doctors or have some sort of record of it. I was in the hospital yesterday because I'm exhausted. My body is not cooperating. I'm having a moment where I'm afraid and everybody thinks I'm so super strong. I'm a good faker. Slow and steady, rabbit. The symptoms just got worse and worse. So I ended up being admitted to the hospital for a few weeks, and over that time, I lost my ability to walk.
So often as general neurologists, we'll see patients where there is no specific diagnosis, where people send the patient to us because a number of other people haven't figured it out. As a neurologist, we work with the brain, but we do more than that. And one of the interesting aspects of neurology is it's like being a little bit of a detective. And we try to identify where the system is broken.
It was pretty scary to go from only less than a month before feeling normal to constantly in pain, unable to walk. My memory, especially short term, was really affected. At one point, it was so bad that I had to write someone had to write my hospital number for my room on my hand.
We got the wheelchair in. Winning! Been drying my hair because I showered out the window like a dog, and it is awesome.
It's okay to not know what's going on for a couple of hours, a couple of days, but when you go days, weeks, months, sometimes years, without having a diagnosis, that can be very emotionally taxing. Patients who lack a diagnosis, we don't know what the enemy is. Given that we don't know what the enemy is, we don't have a real game plan sometimes, and that can be very frustrating.
In learning about autoimmune diseases and doing research, they're progressive illnesses. There are some treatments, but if I don't have a true diagnosis, you kind of get lost in the mix, is how I feel.
I'm walking. That's really, really exciting. I still have a lot of pain, and I'm trying to push myself to get out and do more walking, because what I'm learning is if this is MS, and I kind of believe it is, you have to keep your body moving. It's really important.
I've changed my diet, I've changed my exercise, I sleep well, I really focus on being well. But do I have a diagnosis? No. I'm on a waiting list. That might never come.
The good side of Canadian medicine is that everyone has access to the healthcare system. The not so good side is that there's long waiting lists.
I was told that in order to go on any kind of disability or access my CPP through the government, it would probably take 2 years, and I would need a diagnosis. I used to call the MS Center in Edmonton, and I was told a year, then I was told 4 months, then I was told next month. It screws with your mind. So I just stopped calling. I drive myself insane following up on things that aren't within my control. What I do every day, how I eat, how I move, my mind and the thoughts that I have are in my control.
I'll be closing down my office this week. That's really hard. Oh. But I know that whatever reason this is happening for, it's got to mean that something else good is coming. And so we're going to do that. Oh God, the dog is eating a pen or something.
The most frustrating part about being undiagnosed, I think, is sometimes the opinions that other people put out on you. Oh, well, that was just all in your head. Or maybe it's a mental health issue. Once you start to get well and you start to bump into people and some of the things they say, because outwardly you look fine and they don't understand what happened to you, it It was really hurtful. There were some really hurtful things said to me.
You can have an MS patient that is very disabled, yet looks well. And by the same token, you can have an MS patient who looks very disabled, is perhaps in a wheelchair, but is extremely functional. And I think when you're going through a difficult diagnosis, you have to make sure you don't surround yourself with a lot of negativity.
I had taken the risk of putting myself out there to the Facebook world. I got tons and tons and tons of direct messages, and many of them were people reaching out to me to tell me that they had an autoimmune disorder that they didn't feel comfortable sharing, that they were just living with and suffering in silence because they didn't want to be judged or their illness to be minimized.
We're going to Rotary! Have you ever seen anyone so excited to go to Rotary?
She was doing her best to complete all of her obligations to the club to make sure that no balls were dropped. At the same time, as you could tell, that she was struggling to just keep up with the physical changes that were going on and dealing with the other things in her life. So, you know, it's actually quite inspiring the way that she kept soldiering on and doing the very best she could until she just couldn't anymore.
It just was really a big part of my self-care to stay connected here. It's our own little community within the community, especially when you don't have like a spouse and children and whatnot. This is really my community. They're like a second family to me.
You know, I think Tiffany is a very proud person who takes a lot of pride in her ability to care for herself and to care for others. So I definitely think that there was some difficulty in reaching out for help, or at least some hesitancy, where she wanted to definitely do things as much as she could on her own until she just couldn't anymore.
To me, being able to volunteer and be involved gives me a sense of normalcy. That is part of just who I am. When I was sick and I wasn't able to do that, it's like a piece of you is missing.
Since Tiffany's health challenges this past summer, I would say she's a little more withdrawn, or was anyway, a little more withdrawn, not as sure of herself as she normally is, not wanting to be out probably in public as much as she normally is. I mean, things have come around, like she did leave the board for a short time because she wasn't sure what she could offer and, you know, where it was gonna go. But as soon as she started feeling better, she was right back on the board and she's doing great.
I have had friends that had me stay at their house after I was in the hospital, that have driven me to the emergency room. I had Rotarian friends that I had to call and drive me to the hospital. My mom doesn't go a day without texting me in the morning or texting me good night that she loves me. Most of my friends, when I would talk to them, and still now, when I get off the phone with them, it's, I love you. You know, I don't take that for granted.
I think right now, without a diagnosis, in order to be where I am mentally and somewhat physically, I had to radically accept that this is where I'm at. And I could let it define my days, or I could just accept it and continue to live my best self, my best life with that acceptance. I would say not that I've become more complete, but that I've grown. Like, it's great to achieve goals, but if you're and to do well at work and things like that, but if you're not enjoying life and the relationships and the experiences that you have in the world around you, what is it really for? Yeah, I've just got more clarity around what a life is and what makes a life.